and welcome to Now is the Time. I'm Meri Crouley, and today we have a very special show. How many of you listening to me have been stolen from? That you have gone through a season where it seems like the enemy has come in to try to destroy you? Well, I'm telling you that I'm only speaking about this today because of what I've gone through this past week. Actually, it was a week ago that it was Purim, and I spoke on, I think it was the 21st of March. It was Purim, and that's where the Feast of Esther, where, the wicked Haman tried to come and annihilate all the Jews, and Esther was the one who literally came and petitioned the king, and God did a miracle and brought forth the vindication of the Jews. And the gallows that they wanted to hang Mordecai on, it reversed, and Haman was hung on it. I don't want to tell the whole story because I spoke about it last week. But I just want to tell you that last week I shared this message. And then I left the studio and ended up going to meet some people in Pasadena. And I had, dinner and went to my car afterwards, which was in a secure parking structure. And, I have a car. Normally you lock it. And I had my laptop and my books and different things in the trunk, briefcase. And I go back to my home, which is about a half an hour away, and I go in my trunk, and the laptop wasn't there. And so I'm thinking, did I leave my laptop at the studio? And so I go upstairs, and I'm praying with one of my intercessors, and then the Lord reminds me that I had spoken the night before in Lancaster, and I had my suitcase with some of my books in that. So I go back to the trunk, and I look, and that suitcase was gone. So now I know that my trunk somehow was broken into. And so at this point, my laptop had all my data, my briefcase had a lot of different information that, that I really needed, and my books and tapes. And so I had been robbed. In fact, normally people aren't going to go in your trunk. It didn't make any sense to me, but I felt really violated. How many of you watching this program today has the enemy violated something and has tried to steal and take from you? In Joel 2, verse 26, it says, "For I will restore the years that the locust and the palmerworm and the cankerworm have taken, and I will have you eat in plenty." We're coming into a new season that between Purim, which was last week, and Passover, there's a great shifting that's going on. And the enemy is trying to do everything that he can to destroy you and destroy me. And all I can tell you is, I'm going to go on with the story. The next morning, I woke up and I immediately went online to my, banking application, and I saw that there had been two different Amazon charges for gift cards. And so now I immediately had to call, my bank, and they had to block my account. I went and got a new credit card, and basically over the next 2-3 days, I had to shut down PayPal. I had to shut down Amazon. I had to get new passwords on Facebook, Yahoo, Gmail, everything. My identity was being taken and stolen, and it was just incredible. I was going through a storm. Let me tell you guys, if you're going through a storm, that this is actually good, because God is getting ready to bring a resurrection. The Lord is bringing a resurrection to what's going on. We're coming up to Passover, which is, just in April. I'm not sure the date. I think it's around the 20th. But let me tell you, everything that can be changed is going to be shifted. And if many of you watching, I've been listening to the Lord, and I've been listening to other prophetic people that are really in the know on what's happening now. And the enemy, Satan, has been sending out actually serpents in the spirit and literally trying to discredit and rob you of what God has called you to do. And there's some big doors that are getting ready to open. Not only did I just get back from Washington State and Vancouver, British Columbia, I'm doing a series and a documentary on sex trafficking. Well, I'm telling you, I interviewed 4 trafficked women. I interviewed a former pimp, trafficker, a number of people that are also in the restoration business of women that had been trafficked. So literally I was going into the belly of the beast, so to speak. And, I was targeted. Not that God doesn't cover me and protect me, but I don't know why it opened up the door for him to go in my trunk. It's just bizarre, but that's what happened. They literally went into my trunk. Now, I'm sure I locked my car, but, maybe when you click the clicker, sometimes it doesn't lock all the way. The only thing I can think of is maybe it didn't get locked, and they just were randomly going through cars to see which were open, and they went into my trunk and stole my laptop, my briefcase, and my suitcase. But God is going to bring the restoration that I need. We're getting ready to come into this new season with Passover coming. Remember the Passover. I went to Israel for the very first time in 2005. And I remember that God had given me a word for a girl that I had never met in person, but her name was Kathleen. And somebody had connected me with her because she also has a media ministry. And so I was speaking with her and praying with her on the phone, and I had a prophetic word for her. I'm saying, God is telling me you're supposed to go back to Israel at the Passover time. And of course, with prophetic words, you always have to test it. Just because someone gives you a word, it has to resonate with something God has shown you as well. Every word should be tested. And so after I get done speaking this word to her, I heard the Lord speak to me and say, and you're supposed to go with her. And so I'm going, Kathleen, I felt the Lord say that I'm supposed to go with you to Israel. And she said, I know that. Actually, God had told me that, but I wanted you to hear it. And so I started, moving into the directive of getting a ticket. Once you hear God, see, this is the situation. You need to move. When God tells you to do something, yes, you can pray, you can get confirmation. But when I hear his voice, I pretty much try to move. Now, I had never been to Israel at this point. And I ended up going online. And I had enough with my American Express mileage. I was able to get a free ticket over to Israel on El Al Airlines. And so Kathleen had to be somewhere else, somewhere else. And so I ended up flying in by myself on El Al Airlines into Israel the day before the Passover. Now, and Kathleen wasn't going to come until maybe 2 days after that. So in some ways, I was a little bit apprehensive, to say the least. But Kathleen had already set everything up. There was an apartment that the Dutch had bought to actually make for the Jews that were coming back to the nation of Israel for the first time. Many times they call it making Aliyah. And so I had a man named David, who was a Messianic Jew, that Kathleen had picked me up, and he had my name and stuff so I could see who it was, and he was going to drop me off at this apartment. And so as I'm getting on this plane, and, El Al Airlines is very, very strict about, when they see a single woman, I was married, then, but when they see a woman flying alone, they really scrutinize it because a lot of terrorists in the past have used women to have them bring things in their suitcases or on board with them, that aren't good. So they were questioning me, and I was taken into the back room and all this other stuff. But finally, I made it on the plane, and I'm sitting there on the plane. We take off, and there's all these people speaking Hebrew. There's all these Jews because they're going back to Israel for the Passover, or the Pesach, as they call it. So now I'm looking out the window, and I'm crying because everyone, I know God is with me, but I feel alone, God, I'm going to Israel for the first time by myself. But this is the thing. God is telling you that he's getting ready. He's stretching a lot of you. He wants you're getting ready to move into a new dimension. And we're coming into a place where God is going to bring us face to face with this new anointing and this new glory. So I get off the plane. I didn't have a cell phone that worked over there. And so I literally, by faith, I just kind of walked out and got my bags. And there was this man, probably in his 40s, named David, and he had my name, Meri Crouley. And so I thought, what a relief. So he picked me up, we get my bags in the car, and we go over to this apartment I told you that the Dutch owned, and it was right across the street, I guess, from the place where Ruth and Boaz, from that encounter. If you don't know the story, I don't want to get into all that, but it was a significant location. And so in saying all that, David said to me, it's like almost 10 at night, he said, why don't I bring you into Jerusalem tomorrow and you can go to the Western Wall. I can take you around and show you some things. And then later in the day, we can go over to Tel Aviv and you can be at a Passover or a Seder meal. So I'm thinking, great, because I don't know anybody here, and this is going to be a good situation. At least I'll have somebody to show me around. So he leaves, and there's a little menorah there, and I light the candles, and I turn on some music, and I raise my hands to the Lord. And I could feel the presence of God just like envelop me with his peace and his presence. The next day, we go over to this Passover meal. I see the Western Wall. I'm seeing Israel, Jerusalem for the first time. It's so amazing because I could feel the presence of God in that place. And all of a sudden, I started to realize, like, wow, the Passover is Easter. Resurrection Day. I never even thought about it. It's like the Passover lamb. Remember when God called Moses to go to Egypt and to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And it was like I was seeing the significance of how the Passover, that Jesus was the Passover lamb that took away the sins of the world. So, Moses goes to Egypt. Of course, he didn't want to go. He was called 40 years in the wilderness. And then God has a burning bush experience with him. And, he says, who are you? And God says, I am that I am. And he has this encounter with God, but it was at that point at the burning bush, God tells him to go and deliver the people of Egypt or Israel from slavery. And then he tells them at that point, he said, and when they're released, tell them to ask the Egyptians for the silver and the gold. If you read that passage, I never saw it until just recently, that it was at that point that God told him to ask for the silver and the gold. And so now the situation is Moses doesn't want to go. God says, has your brother go with you, Aaron, and he will speak for you. So they go to Egypt, and there's 10 different plagues. There's 10 different things. I wasn't going to talk about all this, but I'm just going to quick bullet point it. There's 10 different plagues. And, the children of Israel are going through all this stuff, this shaking, this quaking. There's all these things that are happening. And it's the 10th test. The 10th test was the death of the firstborn son. Unless you had the blood of a lamb over the doorpost of your heart. And so that night, the children of Israel put the blood of an unblemished lamb over the doorposts of their hearts. And that night, they sat down and had a Passover meal. They had a Seder meal. And as they're praying and as they're having the Seder meal, all of a sudden the angel of death came. And they could hear the moaning and the wailing and everyone of all the Egyptians who didn't have the blood over their house. And so the firstborn son was taken, died. And all of a sudden Pharaoh said, you can go. Please, just take everything. And that's when they said, the children of Israel said to the Egyptians, we want the silver and the gold. Because Moses was told by God to ask for that. So that's exactly what happened. In 7 days, they literally went from slaves and broke to free and rich in 7 days. God turned everything around for them. But the problem was they never left slavery in their mind. When God brought them out, first of all, you know the story. If you don't know the story, they basically are going out, all of them. I don't even know how many, people it was. I think they said it was like 1 million or 2 million people. It was a lot of people. Let's put it that way. And so they're going out, and now Pharaoh realizes, wow, I don't want them to take off with all this stuff. And, his mind is changing. And so what happened was, the Pharaoh gets his armies, and the children of Israel are on their way to the promised land, only to have, the Pharaoh and the army follow them. Well, see, God put a fire between them. See, God has got you surrounded with his fire right now. This is a new season that God is going to take you higher. But right now, a lot of you are being attacked by the enemy, But God is putting everything into place. I mean, look what happened to me, stolen out of my trunk. There's so many different things. I've had accusations and slander coming against me. If I told you everything this past week or two I've gone through, it's just unbelievable. But this is what God is saying to you. God is getting ready to set the record straight. And the ones that are slandering against you, and the ones that are speaking and gossiping against you, the spirit of Haman that's tried to attack you, God is going to turn it all around, and he is going to make this work for your good. I now know I'm talking to somebody. I might be talking to many people. There's many of you that are righteous, and maybe you've done some stuff wrong. But let me tell you, when you have an issue with somebody, you're supposed to go first to that person. And if the person doesn't listen to you, it says take 2 or 3 more with you. And if they don't listen, then go to the elders of the church. The spirit of gossip and slander that is tried an accusatory spirit. That's what the devil is. He is the accuser of the brethren. When Noah was naked, you know what they did? Is the ones who loved him covered him. David was an adulterer and a murderer, but God brought forth the Messiah through his lineage. Now, I'm not saying that it's right to do things, but when we sin, we have an advocate with the Father. And we all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So we're in a new season. And you know what? God is bringing forth the spirit of love. You know, it says love covers. We want to cover those that we see around us that are going through challenges and circumstances that are really hard. And we need to speak the truth in love, but in love, not in retaliatory, slanderous type of the way they would speak. So let me tell you, so now we're going back to the story. The children of Israel are coming out. Moses, they have all the silver and the gold. They're now free, but they see behind them, Pharaoh's armies. But there is fire that's blocking them so they can't get through. And they're yelling, and they're mad at Moses now. They said, did you bring us out here to die? Did you bring us out here to die? They were angry at Moses. But see, God loves a good story. I mean, when you go to a movie, you don't want to see a movie that everything is always nice and going right. No, you want to have excited. You want to see the first act, the second act. There's always a twist. And you want to be entertained. God knows is the same thing. God now is saying to us that this is a new season. And the enemy has attacked many of you. And you think, God, why are you allowing this? Because the story is going to get good. And you're going to have a miracle. And you're going to be able to tell, you know what? I was right up to the Red Sea. And at the last minute, all of a sudden, the Red Sea opened. And then the children of Israel went through onto the other side. And then when God allowed the fiery wall behind them to open, they came through and they got destroyed by the water. It was a miracle. In fact, Miriam, Moses' sister, wrote the song, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, the horse and rider thrown into the sea. See, God is a great deliverer. He's going to deliver his people. He's delivering America and these countries of the world. The greatest show on earth is getting ready to start. And the enemy is shaking in his boots because he knows that his days are done. Whether you like Donald John Trump or not, it doesn't matter. God is using him to drain the swamp because more people have been arrested for human trafficking and sex trafficking and pedophilia and all this stuff. God is exposing these things that the enemy has tried to do. There's been very high up level people in the mainstream media that are getting exposed. I know a lot of the stories. And the reason they're coming against Trump so much is because a lot of these people are at the very top. Like the Weinsteins and the Matt Lauers and the this and that. There's been 11 mayors of cities that have been exposed that they've molested children. There's been so many indictments that are going out. 80,000 indictments now that are being exposed of people that God is turning things around. Even with Donald John Trump getting vindicated about the whole Mueller investigation for 2 years, let me tell you, it was the day after Purim that he was exonerated. So let me just explain to you that the enemy will try to come after you. And you're on the right path, and it looks like all hell is breaking loose. You know what? This is a good sign. And what we need to do is not whine, but to know that God is divine and that he's going to bring us into a time to shine. This is a season of Isaiah 60. Arise and shine, for your light has come. The Spirit of the Lord is here and the battle is won. And the devil's day is over and done. And so now is the season that you will run. And I feel the Lord said that the gates are opening. And God is going to open those gates and you're going to run that race. And you're going to see that you will not hesitate, but that you will come into a new fate. And the word for you is great. It's great. So just know that God is great. And God, he said, there's nothing impossible with God. God is a great God. And these demonic entities that have tried to just feel the vengeance of God, he said, it is mine. And the Lord said, he is divine. So that spirit that's tried to come against you, the Lord said, it's time for breakthrough. And the devil is through. The Lord is saying, no weapon formed against you will prosper. And every tongue that has risen up against you, the Lord said, he will condemn. So this is a new season for you. You know what? We're coming up to Passover. Let's not look back. Let's look ahead. Let's not be afraid. Let's not fear, which is false evidence appearing real, but knowing that the devil cannot steal any longer, that it's the dawning of a new day, that we're going to come into a land of milk and honey, that your greatest days are ahead of you, not behind you, that this is your greatest hour, that it's your greatest moment. And the Lord said the dreams that he's given you, even, it says in Jeremiah 29, I know the plans that I have for you. They are plans to give you a hope for your future. God has given you those dreams. Why do you think the devil tries to come against you? It's because you're a threat. But you know what? We will not be threatened and we will not be thwarted. And we will not let the enemy be aborted of our dreams. We will come in and we will speak the truth. And we will know that it's our season to be and do everything God has called us for history. So listen, that is my short little Mary message today. Everything that I got stolen, my identity, the this, the that, slander, gossip. You know what? God is saying, Mary, I'm going to turn it all around. I had to get all new credit cards. I had to cancel all my accounts. And when you get your identity stolen, which I've never had done before, it really makes you feel vulnerable. Because you really realize, you felt really attacked. But the Lord said, if God be for you, who can be against you? So now I want you to know that, if you want to know, I've got a couple events this weekend for those of you in the area. I'm going to be the Gathering of the Eagles conference, in Santa Clarita. And I'm going to be at, Pastor Manuel and Shiva Johnson's in Pasadena for a women's event on Saturday night. You could go to my website at mericrouley.com. You should see it on the screen, but if you don't, Meri spelled M-E-R-I, and Crouley is CROULEY.com. I will be ministering at both of these places, and we'd love to see you out there. Both these events are free. Usually we take up a love offering, for expenses and an honorarium. But listen, if you want to make a donation, listen, it's probably cost me over $2,000 getting a new laptop and this and that. And right now they're trying to say it's not going to be covered. But you know what? God's going to repay back for everything that is stolen. So you could go to mericrouley.com and make a donation toward and offset some of these expenses of what the enemy tried to steal from me. So thank you for watching. Now is the time. Now is the time for you to come into a new paradigm, for you're going to be the head and not the tail. And the Lord said, you will not fail, for this is the season that we'll see hail. God said, all hell has broken loose, but it's the time now for you to come into the greatest show on earth. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. God bless.